Lovely group. We have no remote attendees tonight. Just state for the record, we are being recorded. Call us to order at 6:01 p.m. First item under our agenda is an executive session. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, the town administrator's employment agreement, due to the chair's determination that a discussion regarding the matter in an open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the board.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mike, seconded by Laura. Any discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote for executive session.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
And also aye. Opposed, unanimous. We are now in executive session. We will return to open session at the conclusion of the executive session, which might be before 7 o'clock. It might be after. I will make sure to hold public comment until after 7 o'clock in case there is anyone that wants to comment publicly. We'll go from there. Thank you very much.
I feel like I'm not dealing with that again.
you could.
Oh, boy.
All right, welcome back, everyone. 7:04, we will reconvene after executive session. First item on our public agenda tonight is public comment. Is there anyone in person or remote that wishes to comment on anything, primarily things not on our agenda? If you could raise your physical or virtual hand, I will be happy to recognize you. Going once, going twice, seeing none, public comment is closed.
I want to interrupt you, Mr. Chairman. Did
Yeah.
you cover all the readings that we, I know we're not hybrid, but
Yeah, we don't have
I
to
just
do
don't
any,
want to, all right.
yeah, we don't have to do any reading of anything because none of us are remote and we don't have any public hearing where the person would be remote. I did specify during the opening of the meeting that we are being recorded, as always. That's all we need to do, but thank you, Tim. Next up, we have ARPA, follow-up discussion on crosswalk safety enhancements. Scott, if you would like to come forward, and Bill is chair of the Traffic Safety Committee if you would like to, but you don't have to. Okay. So at our last meeting, the board approved, I think it was $250,000 for 7 RRFBs.
Correct.
Learning new acronyms every day in this line of work. And those are basically the buttons that you press on at crosswalks to cause these orange flashing lights to appear to alert cars that someone's going to be crossing the crosswalk. Those go at non-lighted crosswalks, meaning there aren't traffic lights. They're red, yellow, green lights at those intersections, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
That's correct.
So during our discussion, the possibility of adding floodlights or whatever you want to call them, bright white lights to illuminate the crosswalk itself came up. I'm familiar with them from where my parents lived during the winter in Florida. There's one there that was installed a couple of years ago. It's extraordinary. Scott responded back to me like the next morning, I think, with an estimated price of about $4,000 extra on top of the it's about $30,000 or so per.
Correct.
For the standard, so it would be add another $4,000 if we wanted to do that. So we thought it would be a good idea for the board to have a discussion as to whether we wanted to add that to one, multiple, or all of these being here. So do you want to give us any additional information?
Nope, absolutely no problem. So I did reach out to the vendor the next morning. I got a quote of $3,000 per location for materials. The $1,000 for assembling them and calibrating and setting the lights, that's an estimate. I'm not sure what it will be. I'll know that if and when we go forward and I get a formal change order from the contractor. So it's very similar as the $250K. It's a number, it's an estimate. We'll know more about the actual number when the change order comes in. I did speak to the vendor and I did a little bit of research. My initial inkling was that it would maybe not provide much benefit in that my experience with traffic markings, pavement markings, is that the contrast, is what MUTCD looks for. Dark asphalt, light colors. The adding of a spotlight would reduce that contrast because the area would be illuminated. That was my thought. I don't know if that's true enough because I don't have any experience with these things. I spoke to the vendor. Maine DOT did a pilot program with these, gave them a try. They found them to be beneficial in Maine, and apparently that's now their standard. Not that they put them at every single crosswalk, but when they do put RFBs, pedestrian activated rectangular rapid flashing beacons, they have these lights on top of them to illuminate the crosswalk. So those are my findings, but I couldn't really find much else other than that.
Yeah, I looked around and it seems that these are somewhat new. I found that, I think I forwarded an article to the board that the city of Middletown, Connecticut did a pilot program last fall where they installed one or a few of these at crosswalks and they wanted to see how they worked. I could not find any follow-up. The story talked about the fact that it was there and there was a news reporter showed what they looked like and everything else. But I couldn't find any follow-up as to did they like it or not. So I emailed the DPW director of the city of Middletown. He responded back mid or late this afternoon, and I forwarded everything to the board, including to you. They really like it, and it's their plan to use that as the standard for our FBs going forward, and they hope to convert a number of them over. Obviously, that's a greater expense because you need to replace the whole thing. So they're looking for a grant to do some of that. My thinking is that I've seen these, and it just blew my mind how bright they are, and how I've seen it both from the person crossing the road as a pedestrian and as a driver. And it really illuminates so much further ahead that you see the actual person in the road. Because it's just a big bright light shining, just focused down on the crosswalk. And it also adds confidence to the person doing the walking, that they are seen and they can see their way very easily. I really, really like them. I don't know if they're really as valuable in every single crosswalk. Looking at the list of the 7 that we approved last week, the one crossing Church Street to me seems like, if we were to just do one, that would be the most likely candidate, because Church Street's a busy, busy road. I don't know how many people cross at that crosswalk, late afternoons to evenings, a good number of people, but that's the most, of those 7, that strikes me as the most heavily trafficked road of all of them. So from my own standpoint, if we're gonna do one, do at least that one. I kind of wish we could go back in time and do the ones crossing South Street at Ellsworth McAfee. Those are really busy crosswalks at night. I saw that after the concert Sunday night. A lot of people crossing there. It was starting to get dark. But that's a story for another day, because we already have those in place without the lights. But I'm open to doing them at more than that location, or at all the locations. It's up to us.
Just one additional thing if I can, Mr. Chair. So the study that you referenced in Connecticut, there was a narrative, an executive summary of findings that you provided to us as well. A couple points out of that. One is these additional lights that they had for the crosswalks, they were attached to mast arms. Those hold up traffic signals. So I didn't see the intersections because I haven't been there. If there's a mast arm, there's a traffic signal hanging from it. If there's a signal hanging, I'm guessing the intersection is signalized for that crosswalk.
The one they showed in the news definitely didn't have a signal.
Oh, okay.
I think what they did for the test is they may have added it to a location that already had an RRFB, and they just attached a separate mast. I don't know
Okay.
exactly what they did.
All right, so yeah, I did see them from the mast arm, so positioned a little bit differently.
Yeah, okay.
So mast arm,
Sandwiches, just.
a traffic light, you got a big vertical column, silver pole, and then there's an arm that comes out that the lights hang from. That arm is the mast arm. And the lights were, I believe, attached to the mast arm. And one of the notations, I think, from the DPW department there was that they wish they had a different place to fasten them, like on the edges, like we would with the RFPs.
Yeah, the ones that I've seen in person, they were right, on the top of each side of the road where the blinking orange
And that's
lights
be
are.
the logical spot, yeah.
I guess a thought of having them in residential areas, would a bright light like that at night disturb, someone in their home, or, be, they find maybe obtrusive if it's, even though you're maybe increasing the safety of the crosswalk now, you may have people, annoyed of a bright light going off at random times, or?
I think I don't know whether it's code or something else now, a lot of lights need to be pretty well aimed. My limited experience of seeing a few of these is that they are, but I did take a picture of the unit that I saw in Florida. I have no idea whether ours are similar to that or not, but it's a waste of electricity to light up a much larger area than you need to, so
Right.
modern lights are pretty well focused. Is that?
These are generally 12, 15 kilowatt LEDs, so they don't use a lot of electricity, and most lights that I've worked with have shielding options on them. You can put the side shields on them so they're focused down. A lot of parking lot lights have those. I know the ones at Proctor School have them, so it doesn't affect the neighbors on the teacher's parking lot, which is the right-hand side of the school. I'm not sure if these have shields available, but we could find out.
Can I make a comment, please?
Yeah, of course.
So one intersection, I know we were mentioning like the busy streets, at Melican Middle School, that area where cars are pulling in is really dangerous. So if we could focus on that one, because there's so many cars, you can't see children. So at least if there was a beacon that would flash, it would alert, especially the people coming off of Pleasant, that there's a child in the crosswalk. The intersection is very scary for kids.
So
You're saying a beacon that would flash. This is
So not a
spotlight.
beacon, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the spotlight to notify.
Okay.
I don't want something that's permanently lit up, but,
Yeah, these just go off,
Yeah.
when the orange lights are blinking, the white light turns
Yeah.
on, vice versa. So, yeah, so we approved 2 of the RRFBs at Melican.
okay, perfect.
Last week, so
Yep.
it's just a matter of, do we want to add the lights to those?
Oh, and I would like to see it at least at the intersection where cars pull in. Because you've got cars
The
coming from
entrance.
both directions. Does anybody have
There
questions?
are 2, one at each, one at the Melican entrance, one at the Melican exit.
Yeah.
One at Lincoln Street Elementary School, one to get across Pleasant Street, and then one down at Church to get across Church Street from Pleasant.
With the additional lights?
With those are the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. There are no, I don't have an official quote for the RFBs with spotlights yet. I just got the estimate per
Okay.
set.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so again, we can add for about $4,000 per location of these 7 that we approved last week. We can approve an extra $4,000 per to add the lights, to add the floodlight.
Can we do it after and see how the new
No.
version works?
No.
We'd have to do it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can order a full later too. It's not like you can't order a full set later on. These are just 7 now. We have several locations that we need them. But I read what you had said, and I printed it out, and looked at the pictures, and the one in Connecticut was pedestrian level crosswalk lighting at signalized intersections, as Scott said.
That was
So it's right here.
Okay.
It's not on one of these poles. I'm concerned on a couple of things. This, of course, was a pilot program, and we probably should do a pilot program as opposed to let's think about, let's put it and see how it works. I'd prefer it to do another set of lights with a pilot program in a certain place. But in looking at the things that are here, so I'm not sure the weight of these lights or the extra, so you're gonna have an extra solar panel that's on it, because the panel that they have is either 1 or 2 if you have to get more light to produce energy.
Each one of these, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, in some of the cases where you do have some of these intersections we've already picked out, that you have 2 solar panels because of the fact that there's not enough sunlight coming to the source, right, for the RFBs to go off.
That's not necessarily correct. Each site is designed specifically for that location. So we give the vendor the coordinates for each location. They do a solar model for that location to determine what's needed. I've told them in the past, I want the more robust charging mechanism for the battery. So they give you a range, and I want the highest charging capabilities. So yes, the panels are generally a little bit bigger for us than maybe somebody who wants to save $1. But it all depends on which location. The one at Chesterfield Northgate, that might have 2 panels. There's a lot of tree cover there, a lot of tree canopy. The one over at Melican, that's pretty wide open, especially the one by Pleasant Street. So that'll be a lot different. Plus, we need to orientate them correctly. So just because there's not a lot of trees, now if it's a poor orientation, then that could result in the need for more panels as well.
But the question is that, does this light, the spot, work off of those other panels that are already there for the RFBs, or would they have to have their own?
No, it would all be designed together. So instead of the electrical load needed for the amber flashing lights, it would be the electrical load required for the amber flashing lights and the spotlights. And if you go with 1 spotlight or 2 spotlights, obviously the load changes, the battery size will change, and Obviously, the controls change, but also the solar needs.
And what about the pole? Will you have to put in a different heavier-duty pole to hold the weight?
I haven't been told that we need to do that, no. I don't believe so.
And those additions are in these
Yes.
cost estimates?
Yes, yeah.
So, all right, so that was the first thing as a pilot program.
And our poles, just to be clear, the poles that this includes are our standard 2-inch by 2-inch steel black poles. These are not 6 or 8-inch diameter aluminum poles that you might see for a mast arm or a signal, okay? Those are far more expensive. Those poles are $10,000, $12,000 each.
Right.
Okay. And then the question of the cost right now, putting on another $4,000, I mean, I'm trying to figure out ways of saving us money and trying things without adding to the cost. So I feel that another $4,000 is close to buying another unit. And if we need so many units, that it would be better to do one more. I mean, I know that the police department has got one in order for their grant money, like a grant money to get another one. So,
Solar?
for an RFP.
Okay.
And that might be one that that could be the pilot instead of, because these are more school, with the exception of
Church Street.
Church Street.
Yep.
So where they were put in mind to help the schools. And most of the schools, you don't have, there's probably only one school that you have night activity. Actually, somebody told me Algonquin is the one with the night activity. But, so that, is the cost worth trying to do one more thing for somebody, which is a lovely idea, but if we were to do all of them at 28,000, how many more lights could you get in another location? Because we wanted Davis Street, and we wanted several other places for it. So this, again, is one concentrated area. So we're working on the lights, we're working on the truck restriction, we're working on making that section as safe as it can be. But we want to kind of spread the wealth a little bit and have something in another area for the money that you might spend. And that's the way I'm looking at it.
I think if we were going to do a pilot program, it's better to do that sooner than later.
Well, we could
Well, and
I-
do a pilot
now-
program in a week or 2 weeks, or bring it forward again under a separate thing, because it would be a separate vendor.
Well, we don't know when the police grant is going to come in and where they're going to recommend this to go.
And I think 7 locations kind of looks like a pilot program, right? I mean, we're only talking 7 locations. I wouldn't call maybe one location a pilot. I mean, 7 locations, that's a good number. You know, we're not talking right now about adding a whole lot. You know, it's not like it's another 250,000 that was approved. It's 28,000 for these 7 locations. You know, I can say, especially for the Lincoln Street one and the Melican ones, there are a lot of activities that go on fairly frequently enough at those schools. And we live within walking distance of Lincoln and Melican. And sometimes we'll drive just because, you know, people come down that road quite fast. And, you know, other than a spike strip, I don't know what else will sometimes stop them. So I think, even though these are school-oriented, I still think they would get use at night. You know, and, you know, a pilot program of 7 locations to see how it works, you know, to me, this kind of almost looks like a pilot program, you know, rather than 1 or 2 locations. You know, I think this would kind of fit that bill, and we're not necessarily talking about a large expenditure compared to what's already been approved for these 7 locations.
Well, I don't agree with that. $28,000 could be used for something else.
Right.
I think if this proposal came in at $275,000 for these 7 locations, we probably would have said yes just as quickly last week if we had, you know, as 250. So,
Well, this cost doesn't bother me so much as the fact that it's a technology that is not tried and true. We've heard that it's in this town in Connecticut, and that town is triple the size of our town.
oh yeah, that's much larger.
And I'm not sure where in Maine they use them. But before we do anything like this, I'd like to see more research on the lights. I mean, I picture this bright light coming down, and does it distract drivers? I haven't seen them, you've seen them.
Yeah.
Nobody else has seen them. Anybody else?
Not really.
And we don't know what the configuration looks like either. So right now, you've got a pole, you've got a light, you've got buttons, you've got solar panels. Now you're gonna go up a little higher with another spot, another solar panel necessarily,
Yeah, it
and
looks like
another
it's this-
area of stuff, so that we have the snow, and how is the height? How high does it have to be? Or is it gonna be lower, or where's the light actually placed?
I'm not sure. I would think it's right under the solar panels. The higher the better. There's no reason to, I mean, you certainly don't want anything above the solar panels, because that's gonna shade the panels. So I imagine right underneath the panel would be the most appropriate spot. I can find out if they have shielding options. You know, Mike, you're right, a pilot program is this type of quantity. The only place where I would differ is a pilot program is generally more representative sample. So, you know, maybe you grab one on Davis, because that's a neighborhood and it's a straightaway, and there's really, you know, not a lot of activity there outside of periodic, you know, people using the crosswalk as opposed, I'm kind of, when I'm around schools, I'm looking for people in crosswalks. When you go on Davis, if you're not from the area, you may not even know there's a crosswalk at Indian Meadow.
Yeah.
So, are these, since we don't know of any town in Massachusetts that has this, are they allowed by the state?
I looked through the MUTCD, the traffic manual uniform traffic control devices. I didn't see anything precluding this. They preclude color inside the crosswalk that's not uniform and dark. They didn't have any indication that they preclude the use of these lights.
Is it something we should check with the state before we?
Well, the state, the state's not gonna give us any advice on it. It's a town road. We comply, well, my recommendations comply with the Federal Highway Administration. I did do some research under the Federal Highway Administration for some infills in the crosswalks. That was a topic that was brought up in the downtown area to try to beautify it. And the MUTCD had rulings against it because of the contrast, the lack of contrast. So if the determination is these lights don't diminish contrast, I don't see how they would be not allowed. I mean, if Maine DOT uses these, they comply with the same federal regulations we do. And I'm certain Maine would not put something up that reduces contrast, considering their roads turn almost white when they're salting. And they salt quite a bit more than we do, so.
Put a picture up on the screen if anyone is curious. Like I said, I was kind of fascinated by these when I saw them in Florida. So let's see, I don't know which way I'm gonna go here. Here, that's a close-up. So this is the whole unit. The button, I don't know whether this is gonna be similar or different to what we'll get. This is just the one I've seen. So up at the top here is the solar panel. I imagine that's probably the battery or a control of some sort. And then these are the beacons. And this is a close-up of the top. So this with these 5 LED panels, if you will, is that floodlight. So there's one of these, this exact pole on this side, and then a matching one over on the other side of the road. So this protrusion is the only addition that is there, and it's these lights pointed down at an angle, so it spreads across in the, you know, just towards the middle of the road. And that's about it.
Did you say earlier to me that the light from the spot could negate some of the reflective paint on the road?
No, my thought was that it could reduce the contrast. So paver markings are there for the contrast, the drastic difference between white, yellow, and asphalt. Illuminating the area at night, in my layperson's opinion, because I'm not a lighting engineer, could reduce the contrast.
What I saw when driving around them is increased contrast between the blacktop and the walkway, and particularly the people in the walkway. To me, I saw that there was someone in that crosswalk much further away as I was approaching in my car than I would have just from the beacons themselves.
Anything you can do to improve contrast, improve safety.
Yeah.
That's why paver markings went from 4 inches to 6 inches. The standard now is a 6-inch wide line. It used to be 4 to improve contrast.
Well, I'd prefer to wait and put it on Davis Street and try another couple of places. Because the ones we have now, as you say, it's all concentrated in the same area.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to get started with at least one, if not multiple, of these now. Other thoughts?
I love the idea of added safety, but I recognize the need for other intersections.
Yeah. Well, I
I mean,
think,
it doesn't preclude us from adding it to other intersections as we add more.
right. Yeah, I wish we had the ability that, you know, if we do these and we like them, I wish we could go back and add them retroactively to where we have, but it sounds like that's not a reasonable option. But we'll certainly be considering more of these in the future. And the sooner we learn about their effectiveness,
Yeah.
the better. My assumption, Scott, is that if it turns out we hate these, we get complaints from neighbors or they just don't seem to work, we can pull the plug on the light without killing the whole thing.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're spending all that money.
Unscrew it.
I think it's unlikely we would do that. I haven't,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But if for some reason we do this as a pilot program, and it turns out we don't want to continue using them anywhere, or maybe we don't want them at all of the locations that we put in now, if we do multiple locations, that, you know, we can undo them without having to replace the whole unit. I don't think we would, based upon the feedback both from the state of Maine and the city of Middletown.
Right.
Sounds like they are very happy with these.
I mean,
It's
if,
not, Middletown isn't on our RFBs.
That's an RFB.
Their thing was on the standardized polls. They're not on RFBs from this
Did you watch the
article.
video?
I read what they sent you. It's written out.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the video and the news link showed what it was. It's an RFB.
I'm looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, you know, to Scott's point, a pilot program would have it in different areas. These are the 7 we have now. They are around schools, which I think is important because there is a lot of night activity around those schools. You know, again, it's not adding, it is additional funds that we'd be allocating. It's ARPA funds. It's, you know, it's a little bit different type of pot of money that has to get spent. You know, pedestrian safety is a huge issue and a huge topic in town. I think this only enhances it. This doesn't preclude us from adding these things to other crosswalks in the future. If anything, we'll know if we want them or not. And if for some reason there's some giant issue with them, you know, yes, we spent some money on a pilot program to see if we like them, but then we can always disconnect it and move forward and know not to put it on ones in the future. You know,
Why spend money if you might disconnect it? Why don't you do one and see if you like it before you go spending $28,000 on other things that you could buy with that $28,000?
so I would say, because once these are installed, you can't go back. So if we pick, I don't know, Northgate and Chesterfield or something, but, you know, it's really successful, we can't go back and then add it to the additional ones. We can't really go back and add it to the ones we've already deployed. For an investment of $28,000, we can get this added to 7 locations. On an allocation that was $250,000, which, had it been 275, would have passed, you know, it was a unanimous vote, you know, so I think it still would have passed. You know, I think it's worth making this additional investment on these 7 locations for the increased safety. You know, it's an LED light, you know, it's not, you know, maybe a big jump in technology or difference. I mean, we're doing geothermal at the new fire station. These are just some LED lights on top of a crosswalk. You know, I think I'm comfortable with this. I'd be comfortable moving forward voting for this. If the 28,000 needs to come from my pot of money, I'm okay splitting that. So that's kind of where I stand on it.
Other thoughts?
there is a, Mr. Chairman, there is a decent cross-section of locations. You know, Lincoln Street Elementary School is sort of dark. There's no real residents around it. I mean, there's one house that's kind of, but it's still past the woods, so that's, I don't want to say secluded, but it's not in somebody's front yard. Northgate and Chesterfield, that isn't for somebody's front yard. That's in two people's front yards. that's a good test location, see if it bothers residents. Church Street at Pleasant Street, that's a pretty well-lit intersection. It's a busy one, and people go flying through there, but it's pretty well lit between Pleasant, Howard, and Church. You've got a lot of ambient lighting around there. I mean, those are decent test locations. I mean, if I was gonna pick out a bunch of test locations, those three characteristics would probably be things I'm looking for, and maybe a really long one. I don't know, Lincoln and West Main, that's a very long crosswalk. Is that another viable one? I'm just letting you know that there is a pretty decent cross-section here. So there's a lot of redundancy. I mean, Milliken, those three are all pretty much the same. But there is a good cross-section.
So which ones would you recommend?
If you're gonna try
If you had
this,
to recommend three.
if you're gonna do three, I would recommend doing three completely different locations. So you have a good cross-section. You have that in this list. Lincoln Street Elementary School, there really isn't anybody living around there. And it's a pretty dark area
It
in
is.
general. Northgate and Chesterfield, that's a dark stretch of road as well, but there's people who live all over the place there. So if you're gonna try this and make this a standard, you may wanna stick it in somebody's front yard and see if they like it, rather than going to do it throughout the neighborhoods. Church and Pleasant, anything you do there to make that safer, I'm all for it, but that's a pretty well-lit area. So if, if it serves very little benefit because there's a lot of ambient lighting around it, that's a good location to select for it. It's like putting one in at South Street in West Main. Like you get more lighting from the red, yellow, and green lights there than anything else. That place is lit up like a Christmas tree. So I don't think you need any more lighting there. But that's just my thoughts.
What about what Laura said about the one at Milliken? Milliken?
That intersection, there are kids doing night activities, just the entrance side of Melican near Pleasant.
Yep.
But I understand all the thoughts. That intersection has been very, especially because cars come around quickly off of Pleasant onto Lincoln Street.
Yeah, and that would be a good intersection one, because the ones I identified were not at intersections. I mean, Chesterfield, Northgate one is, but Northgate's a through street. It's not like that's a stop control or anything. And that is a stop control intersection on the Lincoln Street side.
I mean, if we could do a pilot at that, is it the Melican north side or
That would be the north one, yes.
north one? I would like to include that one.
Well, I would rather give it, if we're going to give it a try, I'd rather do 2 or 3, because, as I said, I'm worried about the lack of research on these. And, Maine has done it, but no other state in New England. And I would just feel more comfortable not making a big commitment until there's more evidence.
So as far as locations we could agree on, Lincoln, Melican North, Northgate Road and Chesterfield, and Lincoln and West Main,
I'd really like to do the Church Street at Pleasant.
and Church and Pleasant. So 5 instead of 7.
Fine with me.
No, 3.
5 or 4? Chesterfield, 1 at Lincoln, 1 at Milliken, and 1 at Church? What's the
So
fifth?
we all have the memo that lists the 7, maybe to work off of that rather than trying to name. If you want, I can share the screen.
While they're doing that, Scott, did we talk about costs and the prices that if you were able to get others because of what we put down for contingency and everything else, that we'd be getting others?
Yeah, as soon as I get notice that these are the locations, this is, not the locations, this is the equipment we want, I'll put out for the 2 quotes, official quote from the vendor and a quote, a change order from the contractor.
Okay.
Once I have those numbers, I'll have a firm a firm number for the project. Is it gonna be over whatever the result is here, 270? I don't think so. I don't think there's any chance it will be. But as soon as I have a number, I'll email it out to the board so you have it and can consider what the surplus funds are used for, either they go back or what have you.
Because we've talked about getting other lights, because we have so many places that we want to light. And the fact is that the blinking lights do get the attention. Like, people can stand in a crosswalk, if those things aren't going
Yeah.
off, nobody stops.
South Street's
So-
amazing to cross at now with that blinking. the-
Yeah,
the
really,
lights. It makes a big
It
difference.
makes a big difference, but we've also started to plan to have money to be able to buy other ones, as opposed to put all this in one basket. And there are a lot of people who want them. We minimized them to 7 because of the money. So now you're taking some of that. What are you gonna do with the new ones that we might have been able to buy? You know, I mean, it's like, it seems to me like it's an afterthought that should have a lot of thought, and have tried, but I think to jump on 4, 5, 6 of these, I think it's counterproductive, because now we're gonna lose places where they could be.
All right, so let's look again. We're talking about which of these to include in the program. I've put up a little snippet of Scott's memo to us that lists the 7. So rather than talking about streets, maybe we talk about the numbers, so we can be clear that we're all talking about the same things.
Okay.
Sure.
I think I've heard that it was it the Melican North?
Yes, please.
Is the one there, so that is number 2.
Yep.
Church west of Lower Pleasant was the one that I initially came forward with my concern about. There was North Gate of Chesterfield. I think, Scott, you had suggested that one as a good one.
Yeah, that's probably the most potentially impactful to residents.
Okay.
It's dark and the houses are right there. In Northgate, the houses are
Yep.
pretty close to the roadway edge, so that's,
So we'd
Pretty
find
good.
out what the local residents'
Yeah.
reaction was
yeah.
to that. And was it Lincoln at West Main? Was that?
Well, Lincoln at Elementary was a priority just because of how
Lincoln
dark it
Element-
is there, which I can attest to.
Were there any others that people thought were important to include now? Are we, okay with the 4? I
No,
I know not everybody is okay with any.
Well, one more question for Scott. Scott, is it possible that if we were to ask for all 7, the additional cost from the vendor may be less than the 28? That was just the estimate now?
Yeah, the 3,000 per, so 21,000 is a hard number. That's from the material supplier. The $1,000 per, I don't know how much it's gonna cost for a contractor to wire these things up. It's no more money to erect it, it's just a matter of wiring everything up. It could be, incidental, maybe next to nothing, but I wouldn't wanna go the other way.
Okay, thanks.
And I guess my thought is, like, I understand adding more locations, but if this is gonna make the intersection safer, I think we've demonstrated that we want to have safer streets. So if we can make this decision now, it may change how we look at future installations.
But are there papers that show us in Florida that these lights have decreased accidents by 25%?
I don't know the answer. I was unaware of Maine choosing it statewide, so I would, and it's a guess, but I would guess that they would not have made that statewide decision without practical knowledge that it's an improvement, that it's money well spent.
And we don't know where they have, right now, we're a small, quiet town. There's not a lot of activity at night. And Scott said the Church Street in Lower Pleasant is pretty well lit, correct?
That's a pretty well-lit intersection, there's a lot of ambient lighting around there, yeah.
But there are also a
So-
lot of cars that go.
There's a
pretty
lot
darn
of, lot of
fast.
traffic, and it's a complicated intersection when you bring 3 into it, between Howard and Pleasant. There's a lot of distractions
Yeah.
through there.
Yep.
Yeah.
The intersections, again, I know I'm the only one that's actually seen these firsthand. The locations, the crosswalks, those are very well-lit streets, and this brightened it up quite a bit.
Do we have to vote on it tonight? Because, I would like to see some numbers from Maine and why they did it, where exactly are they doing it, and, what their research showed. This is a big deal. We're hearing, kind of anecdotally, it's safer. what's the statistics?
Do we think that Maine might have something available that could help the board if we wanted to continue this to another meeting?
And maybe they did a pilot program, I don't know, I cannot imagine that they have any statistical analysis based on implementation, because it's new, they haven't been using these very often, meaning the vendor selling LED light attachments to RFBs. Even RFBs are kind of new. Having a spotlight on it is even newer, and considering the state of Maine just started doing this, I would be really shocked if they had implementation data.
Was there, is there statistical analysis of the RFBs that was reviewed that dropped, fatalities or accidents by a certain amount?
I did not produce that for the board, meaning I didn't find one or provide that to the board.
Right, I mean, so we're kind of making a level of assumption that just having the flashing rectangle is safer.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we're making a level of assumption that additional light at night is safer. I think that's for me, at least a safe assumption to pilot some locations.
Yeah, it's, to me, it's not a lot of net difference of money for what might be a significant increase in safety. It might not. I don't think it would be a detraction at all. And we know, I mean, I hope we see a lot more of these in town at more crosswalks. And, getting a few of these in now will give us some good education as to whether we should include them at future locations, or maybe we include them at certain other future locations, but not others, based on what we learn.
In reference to your question, Transportation Engineering Division fact sheet, pedestrian crossing beacons. Research has found that RRFBs can produce motorist yielding rates as high as 98%. RRFBs are particularly effective at multi-lane crossings with speed limits less than 40 miles an hour. Unlike the PHBs, RRFBs cannot be coordinated with adjacent signals, but they are less expensive to install. So 98%.
Right, but that wasn't necessarily factored into the decision to approve them in these locations or previous locations.
You just asked the question.
No, I know, but like the yes or no vote from traffic safety or from this board or, wasn't necessarily hinging on that, or I don't know if it was.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it was.
But Mike, my point is, the RFBs have been used, we see them everywhere. So, I mean, one can safely assume that they have done their job. But this is pretty new technology, pretty new, device to hopefully reduce car, accidents. So that's my big concern. So,
Right.
Sometimes we do these things and it sounds logical, but in the end, it isn't. So that's just my concern.
Right, I mean, I would say if we had a consensus on 4 locations at 3,000 per, I mean, that's 12
It's not
grand.
just 3,000,
I
you
think
still have
he's
labor.
suggesting 4,000 per, including labor.
Oh, right, sorry.
Yeah,
So 16,000.
so 16,000.
Right.
It's not the money that bothered me. It's,
I mean, do you think that there's a risk of it being less safe? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
we have seen things that
Yeah.
make perfect sense.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's,
Yeah.
and I would just like to see more evidence, more papers.
I don't know
That's
if-
just me.
Yeah, I don't know if such data exists on a wide scale. We've seen that places that have tried them like them and want to have more. That's about all we have so far. I have not, I looked, I could not find any, honestly, I didn't even find the main one.
The vendor mentioned it to me, because
Oh,
I
okay.
asked him, I said, do you have any
Yeah.
communities, any customers that have purchased these repeatedly? And they said, well, actually, the state of Maine just made this their standard.
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly didn't find any that tried it out and said, oh, it's awful, we're taking them down, or we're not gonna buy any more. And I wish I could invite everyone to my parents' place in Florida so you could see
I mean, we're waiting, Mitch.
what it looks like.
Is it,
Okay, I vote yes. No.
is it okay if we just wait and have another meeting to just do a little bit more research then?
We can. I know that we want to move forward on this quickly. You know, this is all part of the ARPA wind down of
Right.
let's spend the money.
Well, clearly,
there
I'm
seemed to
the
be
only
a
one who
level-
has this concern, so.
There seemed to be a level of consensus around those 4 locations. I know you had concerns about Melican, I have concerns about Lincoln, and then kind of other test locations, again, a pilot program in a residential area, and then a fairly well-lit area. Let's see how much better this makes it. I mean, we're talking $16,000 added on to a $250,000 allocation we've already made.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I'd make a motion if we have 3 votes to move forward.
I just don't want to force anybody.
No, you're not forcing anybody. I get a vote.
Okay. Right, so I think, you want to make that motion?
Sure. So to make the motion correctly, dollar amount would be 16,
Correct.
a quantity of 4.
Yep. At locations number 2, 5, 6, and 1.
Locations 2, 5, 6, and 1, or I guess 1, 2, 5, and 6.
Sure.
Keep things in order. All right, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I move the board vote to approve the use of ARPA funds in the amount of $16,000 for the purpose of purchasing and installing dedicated crosswalk spotlights for 4 of the 7 locations previously approved for ARPA funding for crosswalk safety enhancements as presented in the memo by the DPW director, included in the meeting packet pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A, to authorize the expenditure of such funds by the DPW director. For clarity, those are locations in the memo from the DPW director of locations 1, 2, 5, and 6.
Second.
Everyone understand that motion? I think it was clearly well stated. Scott, you understand which of those locations are? 1, 2, 5, 6?
Or 2, 5, 6, 1.
Yeah, yes.
Come on,
You
Scott.
can do them in whatever order you would like.
Thank you, sir.
It's me. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
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 I see 3 in favor. Any opposed? 2 opposed. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you,
Board
Scott.
members.
Thank you.
Next up, we have town administrator recruitment process. The sad item that we have to discuss tonight. As certainly the board knows, as most of the public knows, Town Administrator Tim McInerney last week submitted his resignation to the board, and per terms of his contract, he's given us 60 days' notice, so last day is October 16th. Do I have that right? Give or take a day. Tim, was there anything else you wanted to add on that?
No, I mean, I want to apologize to the board and to the community for my abrupt or brief stay. You know, it's purely a difficult, but there's many points of the decision tree that got me to where I need to give the resignation. But, you know, the staff here, I said it in an interview with the press about their dedication and professionalism, you know, Scott, to the police chief, to the fire chief, all the way down the line. I've never worked with a more talented group of people. And as for boards and committees, and this board in particular, the support and direction it's given, it's like no other. So there's no, and we talked about this in executive session, which we'll get to, you know, wanting to be here as a conduit for the new person and kind of foster that relationship and, you know, the status of this community. I'm all over the place here because I'm a little bit disheveled as the fact that I'm resigning. But, you know, the point I'm trying to make is it was not an easy decision to leave. And I'm sorry I have to do it in order to, you know, have, to apologize is to help you guys get another candidate that can be a long-serving town administrator without any interim and any iterative steps. So I want to just be positive, be professional, hire the next best candidate that the board will hire, obviously, but if I can facilitate in that process some way, that's what I look to do in order to, penance keeps coming to my mind for a choice of words, but it's not that. Just to, apologize, it's just heartfelt that I feel bad that I have to depart. But I want to do whatever I can in the next 60 days to make you all successful. And we're on a track. The goals meeting and the financial summit, I think, set the tone. Staff is deeply committed. They've always been deeply committed. Obviously, the discussion about finances, about traffic signals with this board, you're deeply committed to the finances of the community. So it's evident that this is a great, well-run community with a lot of thought. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve. I just want to get you to the next step.
Thanks, Tim.
I rambled quite a bit. I apologize.
Thank you.
You were very, you were simultaneously very, very clear. So I appreciate that. I don't want to speak on behalf of the board with this, but from myself, we're very sad to see you go. You've brought a lot of energy and enthusiasm and optimism to this process, tremendous clarity, tremendous transparency, which is something the board was very interested in, and we appreciate you running with that. And although we'll miss you, and we'll have an opportunity for goodbyes a little bit later in another few weeks, but you've, I think, well positioned us for success going forward. You've mentioned that, you're interested in participating and leading to some extent the administrative end of the search process, which I think is very good. It helps deal with the concern of, oh my God, why is somebody leaving so quickly, that you can have those conversations with candidates privately, as you have with us. And, I certainly respect your decision-making process after that private conversation. And I think that will help us attract the best candidate possible. I'd love it if any other board members had anything to say.
We're just, number one, thankful for the direction you've put us in and the pace that you've set. And obviously you have accomplished a lot. You've probably done the hardest part of the work already. But all I can say is I wish you luck, and I hope that your next move is a good one for you and your family.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. I don't know as Tim as long as the rest of you, which isn't actually that much longer, but I would certainly agree. I like the things that have been put in motion, the collaborative spirit and nature that has to emanate from the top, and it has, along with a great attitude and good luck and Godspeed, and whatever comes next, Tim.
I appreciate it. And Diane can always reach back to me after I go.
Oh, yeah.
For, to know what we were saying, what we were talking about, where documents might be.
We'll know how to find you.
I'll find them.
Good.
I really want to thank you so much for all that you've done. You came in, and I appreciate how much of a focus you've put on transparency and how open you've been with our questions and the projects that we've worked on. I really enjoyed the financial summit and having the opportunity to hear directly from the team that supports Northborough. And I thank you for really spearheading that and just really helping us get a good foundation of where we are today. And I wish you the best, and thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm going to have to echo what everybody said. The financial summit was fabulous. I think it's the first time anybody's ever seen the full picture.
Yeah.
And I think we need more of the full picture to understand these little pieces here and there that are always fiefdoms or siloed. So I think you broke through that, and I think that was a fabulous, and it was done well. It wasn't just that you decided to do it, but it was done well. And I think you have set a path for the next person coming in that I know will be beneficial to the town of Northborough, and certainly to whatever the select boards that come and go. And I do think that we made a good choice when we picked you, and we're looking forward to carrying your legacy with the next person coming in. And again, good luck with your next moves and your family and all. So,
Thank you.
Procedurally, we, as a board, need to figure out how we're going to conduct the search. You know, Tim has offered to start the advertising for that, rather than forming another subcommittee and dragging it out. Two advantages that I see. One is that Tim can have that personal contact. You know a lot of administrators, you know a lot of assistant administrators, people that have been in this line of work. I think there's a very good chance you'd be able to find some good candidates for us to interview. And it also helps deal with the question as to why you are leaving, which is unrelated, as you've said, to the town, the staff, the board, or anything like that.
True.
You've got personal reasons, and they're really important personal reasons. And the other is to move it along quickly so that we don't have to be in a process of hiring an interim. This board, you know, has some recent experience interviewing, so I think we'd be able to get up and running once we're at that process pretty quickly. So is the board amenable to having Tim start the process and, you know, ideally bring us approximately 3 candidates to interview, you know, in another few weeks? We'll set
Absolutely.
that schedule. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Lisa?
and I appreciate you, you know, taking this on to help us really make for a smooth transition.
I caused it, so I gotta fix it.
You broke it.
Appreciate that.
So you'll be busy the week of the 19th and the week of the 23rd. So I already emailed Diane to coordinate with you to set times.
Okay.
But when we have candidates, we won't have to figure out the schedule, we'll deal with that now. Just,
And if there's a gap, Diane will be the person, you'll be the interim.
Yeah, I think
Sorry,
that's-
did you say the 19th of September and the 23rd?
the week of the 16th and the
Oh,
week of the 23rd.
16th, okay.
16.
We'll coordinate in those weeks. I thought 18, 19, 25, 26, but if that doesn't work for you. But I want the candidates to be prepared and clear. Whatever dates you have available, they'll keep clear
Okay.
from the time they apply.
Great.
Just a detail.
Okay, so you'll email the board, we'll,
Yes.
you know, once you get the okay from all 5 of us that evenings are available, that'll go into that. That's a good idea, to set that up ahead of time.
And there
'cause
won't be an
coordinating that
excuse
late-
for
yeah.
something.
Yeah,
It's just-
coordinate that last minute was hard. That's good. It's unfortunate we've got to have this process, but I think, given the circumstances, it's the best process we can have. All right. Any other questions, comments, discussion on the town administrator recruitment process? I'll also add, we will be, the finalists that we choose, similar to last time, we will do a background investigation on that final candidate, as we did last time. It's important for the public to be aware of. Anything else there? Okay. Next item is the creation and charge of Select Board Policy Subcommittee. So at our goals meeting a few weeks back, we had talked about one of our high priorities would be to set a policy subcommittee, which is something most select boards have, and to begin the review and here and there addition of policies that are kind of maybe not the most organized policy booklet around, maybe not something that we pay that much attention to, and we should. So I knew that for us to create a policy subcommittee, we needed to have some structure around that, a charge, if you will. As we, you know, when we create other committees, we create those. So since we didn't have one, I went around and I took a look. I found that Wellesley's their charge for their policies, their select board policy subcommittee seemed to mirror pretty closely with the one that we had talked about. So I put that forward as a starting point, as a draft for consideration. There are a lot of other ways to do it, I'm sure. And of course, the policy subcommittee can certainly come back with recommendations for changing their own charge. You know, first thing to do would be to approve whether it be some version of this or something else that somebody had in mind. Certainly open to anything. Following that, our policy is that the chair appoints members of subcommittees. I know both Lisa and Julianne have in the past expressed real interest in that. I'm certainly fine with that. So I'll ask that question again when we get to that point, just to make sure the two of you are still interested. in serving, and then you'll get appointed to that. This would be a public body like all others, so you would hold your meetings in public with, whoever is on that committee would choose a chair, and you would decide whether you wanted to meet over Zoom or meet in person and be recorded or whatever else, however you would like to run it, you'd run it. So
Tim, does Grafton have a policy subcommittee?
No, they might have at one point, or they might now, but when I was there, they did not have one. We started out with all policies were executive policies, and the board voted on everything from the use of a credit card to travel to seminars. And then we figured out, well, some of that's administrative purely, and the board doesn't need to vote those executive. You want executive policies when it's going to be around employment or operations. So those things are important to have the executive board, ratify. But short answer is no.
Okay.
And we don't have to have a policy subcommittee. We can do policies as a full board. Some boards do exactly that. There's nothing wrong with that other than it's a bit of work.
Yeah, especially starting from where we're starting.
Exactly. That's, it is possible that after a year or two of having a policy subcommittee and things get caught up and in a good form, that maybe it makes sense at that point to dissolve the policy subcommittee, or to only have them meet once a year and, and regular amendments just go through the full board as they come up every couple of months. Different ways of doing it.
So my only question on, I guess I like the Wellesley model, but this is going to be a lot of work.
Yep.
And to plan, 48 hours to get the agenda out and all of that sort of thing, it will be a little cumbersome. So is there a way of designing this so it's not an official okay.
Any body created by a public body is unto itself a public body.
Okay. But you see what I'm saying? This is, if we have an hour here or there, we could meet, but we can't, so, okay.
Yeah, and, assuming it's the two of you, you could decide to, meet every Monday afternoon at 3, or, something like, whatever happens to work for you. I would strongly recommend to have a staff member as part of that meeting. I think that's critical, and that's, in here, whether it be the town administrator or assistant town administrator. Some policies are more applicable to other departments, but most of them are, I think, are top level. You figure that out, and you just figure out, you can schedule out, you can go ahead and say, okay, for the next 5 meetings, here are 3 policies per that we'll go through. If that works, or you could do anything like that, and then you can have the next 5 agendas set.
So basically, when we decide on the policies that we want to bring forward, we bring it forward to the board, and the board votes them in.
Correct.
Or it doesn't.
Correct.
Whatever they want to do.
Yep.
If we were looking at the amount of ones that are already in place.
Yep.
So we're starting with those to go through and then adding the ones that we want, or what we could do is put the ones that we want to the side and have them ready, and then go through this relatively, it's not quick, a half hour, I got to like 5 categories.
Yeah.
But some of them are outdated. And I think I would like to see a little different in the, for the next 2 years, I would imagine it's going to be hard to not want to be able to do that, but I don't know that after that, it wouldn't be a yearly review for every board that gets together, because it seems to me that they agree to these things. It's not just assume that you agree to it just because it's in print. You have to come forward and say, after reading the policies and procedures, our board agrees to this.
Well, once this board approves a policy, that is the policy of the board, whoever is on it.
Right,
Until-
that's why
yeah,
I'm saying. So
yeah.
then the next year, say 1 year happens and there's 5 new people.
Yeah,
Those people have that choice to choose to follow those or to change them. Because
They
it's
would-
a
They
liquid,
would be in place until that
Right.
board changed otherwise. So
Right.
there's no approval process, they're approved. But they could have a vote to rescind a policy or change a policy, and that can happen
correct.
at any time.
So that's why we probably, on number 5 here, are the policy considerations. We've got, how old is the policy? Ideally, policies are reviewed at least once every 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
I think there should be something to the effect of every year, you look through them. I mean, we've already, once we're done, we've seen them.
Yep.
So it's not gonna be new news. But somebody new coming in should have some understanding of what it is that they're gonna be
Oh,
doing.
yeah, I would expect that the policy book, once it is revised, becomes handed to a new member.
Right.
Like, they go to Andy's office, they got sworn in, here are your policies.
Right.
And they should be very clear to get on the website and everything like that.
Well,
Yeah.
and they will be on the website anyway, right? So I would like to make a recommendation for future, is that anybody running for this office
Yeah.
gets this well in advance to understand, because you come to it without any understanding, and there's a lot of catch-up to do.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, I think this is again like the financial summit, it finally creates a document where people are aware of what they're supposed to be doing. So,
I was very happy that this came up as a project for us, but I recognize it's a lot of work. I mean, I've spent hours digging through it. Is there gonna be a process for us to, like, share some of the things that have caught my eye that I think would be good for, just, I'm sure you're probably already noticing them? I'm sure
well,
there'll
no,
be
you
a lot of
should, I would
consistency.
think, would you, you know,
Well, let's,
send
well,
us-
we should decide that we're gonna do it,
Yep.
then figure out who's gonna do it.
Yep.
And then,
So the
then
next.
step 3 will be, how do we get
Okay.
general
Yeah,
input?
so the next agenda item after the creation of this is the existing policy overview and policy subcommittee priorities, where as a group, we can take a very high-level walk through the policy book.
Got it.
And it's really, you'll go ahead and you'll say, these 4 seemed like these should be some of the first things you should work on, and I'll have
Okay.
a couple, and, each of us will have a couple. And that's kind of a starting point. And it will be an iterative process.
Okay.
Because it's a big book. There are a lot of missing policies. Part of that could certainly be going ahead and looking at policy books of other towns, such as the one you worked on in Grafton. Most towns have very organized, comprehensive policy books. Ours are not as organized or comprehensive as they probably could be, and I hope we can get there. And this is just, step 1 in doing that, and figuring out, and it's then your subcommittee, you can then figure out your own priorities, and/or we as a full board can provide direction to that, if we felt that there was something that needed to be worked on right away.
I would like to say that, having read through most of this, whoever did this did a good job. I mean, it's,
Yeah. There's some weird structure to it, like I forget the one on, whether it be the appointments or public input was, I thought it was in an odd place structurally, but this is something that happens with the policy books over time. It was probably put together, Diane, I don't know if you know the history on it, it was probably put together at some point in a logical way, and then Band-Aided on top of. So, in the time that any of us have been on the board, there hasn't been a lot of attention paid to this. So, and I am fine if the policy subcommittee wants to come back and say, we want to completely restructure this. Not necessarily throw out all the policies and start over again, but renumber and come up, and that, a good thing to do might be to look at what other towns do. And I'd also recommend maybe taking a look at what the school committee does for policies, which are very well organized. So school committees have a couple of things that make it easier for them to do policies. One is that they're all essentially the same under state law, that they have a very defined authority under state law. And so one school committee is very, very similar to another, where select boards are dramatically different because charters are dramatically different. The other aspect is they have the Massachusetts Association of School Committees that helps them out. It's sort of their version of the MMA. And they have, as part of their charge, is to help school committees with policies, and the MMA does not do that. So the MASC comes up with recommended policies, writes them down, and does that. We get some of those from Copeland and Page. Occasionally, they'll issue something, but you can go to MASC and say, give me a recommended policy book, and they'll give you the book. but going ahead and seeing how the school committee does it for the organizational stuff is very helpful. Most of their policy is school-specific, that doesn't apply to us. So back to the charge, are there any changes people want to make relative to what is proposed? Do we want to start with that and have the policy subcommittee come back to us with changes?
Well,
They see things they'd want to do differently?
there's only a couple of changes I would make, but is this whole thing gonna be listed in that, both pages?
This would be the policy for the policy subcommittee.
Unless the policy subcommittee decides to change.
In which case, yeah, you can definitely come back to the full board
Yeah.
to make changes,
Right.
recommendations.
This is a very good start.
Lisa, was there anything that you recommend changing from day one on this?
Well, just under applicability, I just keep the policy, applies to review and drafting of all select board policies unless the select board directs otherwise.
What section and number are you looking at?
It's just applicability before policy 1 and 2 on the front page.
Applicability. This policy applies to review and drafting of select board policies unless the select board directs. So eliminate the or the chair?
Or the chair in case of urgency only,
See, only-
because I don't think that,
Yeah, I know, I'm fine removing that. I'm trying to think if there's a value in that.
Well, yeah, it does clarify that in cases
Cases
of urgency only.
When I saw
What
that, I like,
cases?
how do you define urgency?
right, how do you define urgency? But I would think that since we're able to change the parts of what the, purpose is, I think you don't need it, because it's really kind of, it's understandable, the policy is applying to review and drafting of the policies. It's not, what's the urgency that's gonna come in?
Occasionally, there is something that comes up that needs a policy right away.
Like what?
Flags, for example. Some towns have dealt with situations where an organization has said, hey, can you fly my flag over town hall?
And we've
And-
talked about design review, and that
Yeah.
there's already, I thought there was something in place already for that, but those things,
There's nothing in the policy book that covers that.
That covers that.
So
So-
sometimes you need to all right, we need to deal with this right away. So-
right, and that's why I think some of the things that we had talked about that we want to change
Yeah,
might be dealt with even before this whole thing is completed. So if we want to institute a policy
yeah.
prior to this entire thing going
Oh,
through,
I expect, honestly, I'd expect that every couple of meetings, of board meetings, there would be a policy section on the agenda
yes,
where the two of you would present.
right, at least one
Yeah.
or two things.
Yeah,
And they could
and
be
we would
new, it
approve-
could be revised, but
Yeah,
it could
yeah.
be, that's why I'm saying, with this,
Yeah.
you're going to have that opportunity
Yeah.
to bring it forward
Yeah.
for the board to
I
discuss.
think where this comes up is if something happens, Tim, or future Tim, calls at the chair and say, hey, we've got this thing, we need to figure out what to do, and the policy doesn't tell us. We need a meeting tomorrow to decide, or this needs to get on the agenda that's,
I kind of like the
in a few
idea of
days.
a break glass in case of emergency clause.
Yeah, like in case of urgency. Ideally, I'd wish urgency to be defined, but it allows the chair to put a draft policy on the select board agenda without it having gone through the policy subcommittee first.
So that's all it does, is put it on the agenda?
That's how I read it.
Because I wouldn't want you to make a policy.
Oh, I can't, no, the chair cannot make a policy. Only the select board can make a policy.
Right, it says review and drafting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has it happened before where something has happened as an emergency and you had to enact a quick policy?
This board has not dealt with, at least in my time here, has not dealt with things on a policy level. We've made decisions
Yeah.
on things that have come up quickly. I'll bet some of those things may have been ideally crafted to, like, let's make a policy about this so that we don't have that, if the question comes up again, we have it sorted out rather than just the one-time thing.
Got it.
So I can give you maybe a little example. I remember a few years ago, we decided to use code red to let people know that we were spraying for mosquitoes. And I don't think we have a policy on using code red.
That's right.
So I just wrote down add a policy.
Yeah, yep. You're right, so that could be something of, well, I think today we're spraying for mosquitoes. In theory, if it was, Wednesday, then the board could discuss, hey, let's send this out. Or we could have, for example, using the code red to tell people about town meeting.
Yeah.
We could
yeah.
have then, instead of doing it as a one-time thing, we could have said, this is the policy. Or we could have said, let's try this once, and then right afterwards enacted a policy. We didn't really do that. That's, in theory, we're a policy board, so we should try to work through policies rather than one-time decisions when they make sense. But, yeah, Lisa, back to what you were saying, only the entire board can vote on a policy. It's really, the urgency is who drafts the first draft of the policy for presentation to the board. Ideally, that's the subcommittee that does that. On some occasions, there may be urgency where really it wouldn't be the chair, it would really be the town administrator that would draft a policy, and then the chair's job would be to put it on the agenda. And that would be only in the case where we needed to review either a new policy or more likely an exception, like a change to the policy that it turns out needs to be dealt with right away. But it, again, has to go to the full board.
Well, just that,
Or any
that
inaction.
happens, the two-person decision-making happens a lot, and not just with our board, but other boards, and people are not happy with that.
Well, again, we could set up a situation where draft policies must go through the policy subcommittee no matter what, and you can't put a policy on the agenda otherwise, then you don't have the ability to respond quickly to emergencies.
But I quickly mean the 48 hours that you would have to have.
You'd have to have a double 48 hours, so you'd have to, 48 hours to have a policy subcommittee meeting, and then that conclusion, you'd have to sort that out, and then it would have to be 48 hours before a select board meeting, which would be the first opportunity in an emergency situation to approve a policy change.
But you wouldn't have it, there wouldn't be any other time limit anyway, because it's the same thing.
Well, you'd be able to do something within 48 hours if it was the select board as a whole. Ideally, I'd love a little bit more clarification to what urgency means, and say something that can't wait until the next policy subcommittee meeting.
Right. Because we're not on any deadline dates. We don't have to have every third Thursday or anything else like that.
Yeah,
The subcommittee can meet at any time.
Right, you just
With
need
48-hour
to, yeah, you
notice.
need to post in advance.
That's the only question I have.
Okay. Okay, any other questions, comments?
I'm looking forward to this process.
Yeah.
I'm glad somebody is.
This is, I'm happy, I mean, however I can help, I will.
Okay. All right, is there a motion?
No, you guys are good.
Yeah.
I'm not stepping on Julian's feet. Mr. Chair, I move the board vote to create a select board policy subcommittee with the charge as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Laura, seconded by Julianne. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I see that as unanimous in favor. Policy subcommittee is created. My assumption, Julianne and Lisa, you're still interested in serving on that subcommittee?
Yes, but if anyone else feels passionate about it, I'm willing to step down for sure.
Is there a term for the policy subcommittee?
A year.
Said 1
Well,
year till the
according to-
next election.
So my
right?
thought is, I mean, I'm happy to help out once the framework gets started, because if it's going to take a lot of time, I'm happy to help out, but the organization of this right now is a little bit overwhelming to me. Maybe it's overwhelming to everybody.
You've got two things on your plate already.
Yes. No, I think you guys are gonna do great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll try.
Okay, so I will formally appoint Lisa and Julianne to the
Thank you.
policy subcommittee.
Thank you.
That has just been created. Next up on our agenda is existing policy overview and policy subcommittee priorities. So in our packet is a very large number of pages of the existing policy book, if you will. And sorry, I just gotta plug in my laptop. So I don't expect that we will review the entire policy book in any amount of thoroughness, because if you notice that there is a policy in there that says that we can't meet after
11:30
11:30 unless we vote otherwise, so look at that.
Yep.
Jeez, I don't remember voting on that.
I hope we're not
either.
anywhere near 11:30, but just,
Not yet.
you know, maybe take a few minutes and say, hey, this is something. My couple of thoughts, the organization of the policies is sort of a top-level item. How the select board adopts policies is something that most boards actually have, that we don't have right now. Boards typically either have, a policy, except in cases of emergency, can't be adopted until the second reading or the third reading. Take a look at other towns and take a look at the school committee for examples of how that works. I think it's important to have a thorough process and not go too quickly, because over time, these policy documents are important, and they become the driving documents for how everybody does their work. So it's helpful to take the time. And there are a whole bunch of references, of course, to Board of Selectmen, which needs to change to Select Board, and check with Andy as to whether that is automatically taking place as part of the recodification process that we approved, or if it's not, because these are kind of in the same area on the website as all the other town code items.
I think he said that they are,
Yeah,
or
I
would be
think-
changed when
Yeah,
they do this.
okay. In which case you wouldn't have to deal with that, but good to confirm. I had a couple of other things, but I want to see what other thoughts people have. Again, this is to, maybe set the priority, but certainly not exclusive of what to work on.
We should do some new ones, probably right away, the ones we've talked about in the
Yep.
past.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. The appointments policy was updated, was it about 5 years ago?
2019.
Yeah, so five years ago, and that was really a complete revision. I thought that was pretty good. It's probably pretty much in line with how we do it, but that's a regular thing that the board does, so it might be worth taking a look. There's a section that's within personnel for some reason on how our meetings are run.
Oh, yeah, it's just
And
looking
that
at
is completely out of date with how we do it.
all over the place.
It's, yeah. It
procedures for meetings.
Yeah, it was probably accurate at some point whenever it was enacted. And I thought it was weird, it's within the 9-52 personnel thing. Agenda order and things like that is completely unlike the way that meetings have been run for a number of years. Executive session minutes.
Yep.
Had some
Quarterly.
quarterly review, which,
That's not
that's a great goal. I almost think that that's too good of a goal to set, but if we can do it, that's great. There were a couple of things, let's see. I see no one else jumping forward, so I'll ramble unless or until someone raises their
I've
hand.
got so many notes. There was
Yeah.
just a lot of questions that I
Okay.
had about how important they were
Yeah,
in the
okay.
policies. I liked how there's dates lined up for when we should be notifying the public about town meeting. Is there a central calendar for how we can track that?
And some of those dates might not make any sense right now. I would strongly encourage the policy subcommittee, as I said, to work with probably Diane at this point, because she will have a good idea as to how things work now, and then you can make a balance between, is what is in place now what actually happens? Is that what should be the policy? Or is the policy the right way of doing things, and then we need to change the operational structure?
Ready to the procedural timetable under F, I'd like to see number 3, 4 weeks before the town meeting, the clerk will advertise by installing lawn signs at all public and owned buildings. That's what you've been asking for a long time.
Yep, I like that.
In
What is
advance.
that?
So to talk about the 14 days before the annual town meeting and what
Oh.
happens. So we're gonna give them 4 weeks before the annual town meeting, have the information out in different places, but so that it's new news as opposed to, oh, by the way, tomorrow we're having a meeting. I made a note of that.
There's a snow removal section for specific businesses in town.
I'm sorry, what?
Snow removal, yeah. I saw-
Page,
What did you say? I didn't hear your comment.
yeah, it's,
Snow removal for
yeah,
businesses.
9-64-050.
I thought that was where they're gonna locate the snow. Maybe I misunderstood that policy.
Yes, highway department vehicles remove snow from the edge of sidewalks. located
Well,
near-
that's the downtown, so when the sidewalks get clogged with all the snow, that they're required to make them movable.
For safety policies, is the board notified if there's situations where somebody gets injured or if something happens?
An employee gets
Yeah,
hurt,
if there's anything,
it's not, a severed limb, we would certainly call the chair, but
okay.
a car accident, if it's not severe.
I
it's
meant
not-
more like things within their job.
Yeah, well, if they're driving a heavy truck
Oh.
and they hit someone at a stoplight, something
Okay.
like that. I think we haven't had it happen, thank God. but,
Right.
Certainly would let the
Yeah.
board know.
And then one here under the Articles 932-020, Articles not in conformance with policy.
What if, one of us offers to be chairperson, and everyone emails the chairperson their questions and concerns about specific?
Tricky because those things do come back to the full board and could be a violation of the open meeting law of the full board.
If we submitted those to towns, kind of like with the ARPA, like submit them to town staff and then to the committee?
Yeah, and then staff could
I mean, not to throw
consolidate
more
them in a
stuff,
way. I
but-
mean, I think if the suggestion is, hey, I think the policy subcommittee should take a look at item, policy 9-32-010, policy regarding articles 25,000 or more. I think that's totally fine. That's an agenda item suggestion, basically. But if the suggestion is, I think you should change that to $50,000, then that is something that I don't think board members should do to a policy subcommittee, but you could do to Diane, and then Diane could sort of filter that down in some way that's not reflective of, this came from X board member.
If they could add that discussion to an agenda that you hold a meeting, you could, your subcommittee could, when you hold a meeting, your agenda could reflect, they want to change it from 25 to 50.
Okay,
And we could also talk about those things at regular board meetings. So as I said, I suspect we will have maybe a monthly agenda item for policy updates.
right.
And that could be, here are the 3 that you're recommending the board entertain approval of. And you seeking input from the board on the next set we should look at, or specific things that you think we should change. Or it could be, hey, at our next meeting, we're going to be reviewing these 5 policies, what do people think? And then the board at a public meeting can say, here are some, here are the things I was thinking about. And that's, because that's then an open meeting of the board, totally fine.
Okay. Because right now, there have been some good suggestions, and I haven't written them down.
Well, there's a meeting video.
True.
I always, another policy that I really liked was about correspondence, and it said that we should have an opportunity to review and acknowledge receipt of correspondence, and that's in section 9 dash, it's on page 26 of 57. And if we can get a little bit more clarification in that article about, I don't know, what else we can do there, or if it's just receiving it, I would love to just have, and I think you're doing a lot of that already, in terms of acknowledging when a request comes into our email. I guess it would only be the things,
Address to the board, it'd be nice if you had an agenda item that just said correspondence at the end.
Yeah.
Before reports, where if there were a letter from the state rep or from Chapter 90, you could just acknowledge, you don't have to read the whole thing, just say, we received a number of correspondence this week, and just bullet them down.
yeah.
and-
I would love to add that to the agenda, and I don't know if that needs to be a policy, but I really liked that in our,
We'd probably redefine what 2 is, and just define it better, and I agree.
pardon me?
I said it would just kind of redefine what 2 says already. You say you acknowledge the receipt of said correspondence.
Yep.
And say, at the meeting, at the next meeting or that sort of thing.
Or putting it on the section that says the agenda, like what should be included in the agenda, but yeah. I like that. I also like the shade tree policy, which I know we've talked about a lot over the years. I don't know if, when we're looking at that, if there's a way that if residents wanted to donate trees, if there was a process around that we could put into place. I know that my Girl Scout troop, there's a tree promise that a lot of the Girl Scouts are working on, so they're looking for areas to plant trees. So if there's a way we could, it's tricky, but.
That can come up as either the policy subcommittee or the full board goes through a policy. We may have ideas as to nice ways of implementing some of the details of that aren't really, they don't need to go in the policy itself. But
Okay.
it might be, hey, we should really have a page on the website
Yeah.
with a pretty tree and, a form to fill out if you want to donate a tree.
Yep. What the cost is
something.
and
Yeah.
the dedication, but I like that policy. I hope we can get a lot more activity there.
I agree with that.
Are there any other policies that any one of us at this stage want to recommend as a priority for the subcommittee? If not, as I said, it can be a frequent agenda item. I'm not hearing anything, but I'm seeing a lot of reading and flipping
I'm
of
just
pages.
trying to
so
follow
I don't
my
want to move
notes.
on unless I know that people are okay.
I just want to review the last couple pages, please.
If we want, we can put that as an item on our next meeting, just as a follow-up. And,
That's a good idea.
yeah,
You know what else I found was confusing? There were some, like the policy on overtaking vehicles. It seemed like that was more of a police thing than necessarily a select board policy. There were some things in here. If you look at page 51, there's a policy on when to overtake vehicles.
Oh, isn't that, that might have, we had an issue where if somebody's in pursuit, I
Yeah.
believe, and the pursuit looks like it's going to cause
Oh,
an accident,
careful with that.
they have a policy of,
Yeah, yeah, and that would be an item that, we might seek feedback from the town administrator and the police chief to say, should this even be a select board policy, or should this be something at the operational level of the police department? And
You're gonna have to reconcile with, they have the best practices, they're accredited police department, so they have what the national accreditation standards tell them they're supposed to adopt for use of force, high-speed pursuit,
right,
transporting prisoners, all that stuff. If any of that's in here, they need to, you should just reference whatever, like they're purchasing and a procurement thing in here for bidders. 30B is gonna trump anything that you talk about, so you should just refer to MGL Section 30B, and that'll be a policy.
yeah,
I wonder if that's something, one of your first things maybe to look through the policy and see if there are areas in there that you shouldn't spend too much time on, if they're going to be covered by.
yeah.
Well, that
that's-
really should be us figuring that out for
Yeah, I
them.
think
Staff
that's-
should figure that out.
Right, because there's so much in here.
Yeah.
I mean, I flagged certain things that I wanted to do something with, but this one is the same thing in a different form. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can just go, yeah, it's all done, all done, all done, all done.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm looking right now, it says earth removal board.
right.
Oh,
Yep. That's an easy one then, delete it.
And then another silly question, are yard sales prohibited in town?
What is it called?
Yard sales? It
I
says
don't know,
that
the signs used to be.
you can't regulate outdoor display of merchandise. So I wasn't sure on page 56. And then, I mean, it sounds like businesses can't put products on the sidewalk. Just seems like there may be some policies that can be improved. I guess this is why we're doing it.
This is why we're doing it. There are a lot in here, and we could spend a very long time finding things that don't make a lot of sense.
Is that not what we're doing?
Yes. Well, I think it's setting priorities.
Yeah.
And our trusted volunteers will
I'm
be
happy to
spending the
follow,
hours in
you
there.
know, whatever their priorities are,
Yeah.
and then to chime
So-
in from there.
So, I will set, I think, at Julianne's suggestion, for our next agenda, policy subcommittee update and priorities.
Okay.
And that would be if the policy subcommittee has a chance to meet between now and then to give us some informal or formal report back. You may not be ready to recommend specific changes, but as to how it's going, that would also be an opportunity for the full board to have another opportunity to think through and, you know, and say, you know, here's a change in a top-level change in a policy that, you know, we think you should look at this one. But again, you know, when you are ready, go ahead and, you know, and then tell us at one of those meetings, hey, here are the next 5 or the next 10 that we're gonna work on. And that's when we can even have a little bit more real discussion as a board in advance of those discussions.
Yeah, and the simple ones, I mean, we could set it up to have 5 simple and 2 new, or something to that
Something
effect,
like
that you
that,
can
yeah.
chip off 2 things at one time.
All right. Are we good with this agenda item now? I think this is really exciting.
Yes,
This is a big one.
Good one.
Next up, we have approval of meeting minutes from the August 1st, 2024 Financial Summit Joint Meeting. You took a lot of information and put them into a nice set of minutes.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
I loved the event.
Yeah, that was really good. Is there a motion on the meeting minutes of August 1st?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 1st, 2024, the Financial Summit meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Lisa, seconded by Julianne. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Approved. Reports. Does anyone have reports tonight? Let's see, let's go, start with Mike and work your way over.
No, I don't have any reports for the board this evening.
Okay. Lisa?
I do. One of the things I did notice, though, that didn't get transferred over, is that, it was my understanding from the last meeting, because it was getting late, that we were gonna bring 17 to 23 over, the numbers.
Yeah.
17 was reports.
Yep.
18 was future agenda items.
Yep.
19 was set regular meeting schedule.
Yep.
Set holiday schedules,
Yep.
20, any other business, 21, public comment, 22. But we only have reports, we don't have, did we set those meeting dates? I
We
thought
didn't set,
did.
so what we agreed on is that we had set the September 9th as the first meeting, and then on September 9th, we would discuss other things, because that's how we dispensed with that, so that's on September 9th.
Okay.
We agreed we would have a September 9th meeting, and then at the September 9th meeting, we'll deal with the next 3 months of meetings.
All right, but the holiday schedule,
Yep, so for the holiday schedule, it was suggested that we deal with that at the same time as setting the meeting schedule. So that's why staff's recommendation was to put that off to the next
all
one.
right, but future agenda items should have been on here. I
So
would
if-
like to see that, I thought we had agreed to do that every
My
meeting.
understanding is what future agenda items were to list out known future agenda items. So if you look at fall after adjourn on the agenda, there's future agenda items, and those are some items that Linda had on her list that she put down for September 9th. That will become more thorough over time and include further meetings out. So, for example, if there's a poll petition tentatively scheduled for a meeting in October, that'll get on there now, well in advance of it being finalized, knowing that that could move. And that's kind of what that future agenda items are for. Anytime that you have if any board member has a specific request or suggestion for an agenda item, that can be brought up to the chair anytime and can be brought up during meetings under probably the any other business to come before the board, if that's what you were thinking about.
Well, no, I mean, we talked about actually having that item as a future agenda item and always having it when we were at the meeting.
For what purpose?
For that purpose, if you wanted to bring something up and say for the next, because Julianne had talked a lot about it, having having an item that you want to bring up and get more information on. So
Okay.
you just finished this meeting.
Yep.
And you wanted to get more information on it, that you can bring it up by saying that would be under the future agenda items for the following or the one after that.
I mean, that can happen anytime with other business to come before the board, but if the board wants to have an explicit item for that, that's fine.
Many committees do that.
Okay.
And at that point, let's just say I suggest something that nobody else wants to hear about. Then I can get consensus from the board and the, no, we don't want to talk about that.
Okay.
Or they do. So it would be nice to get some feedback.
Okay. Maybe we think about, I'll work with you, Linda, on language, because we have future agenda items that are actually future agenda items. Maybe we'll come up with a different phrase for one or the other of those. Okay.
Yeah, this is really great.
Yeah,
Love
yeah, this was good, and this was a first
Proposed to
pass.
sign.
Over time, I think this will get longer as now the staff knows that we're looking for that. I think it's super helpful to know what's coming forward.
Yes, I definitely agree.
Yeah. And we should probably come up with some language, Linda, on that list of future agenda items of these are tentative and so forth and so on, because they do change.
Okay, now for my reports.
Yeah.
So, in Traffic Safety Committee, being the liaison and some of the things that have come up, these are some meeting minutes that haven't come before us, although I would like to have them come and do a recap of the year, because we haven't done that yet. What they've looked at, what they've made the determinations on, what we can make determinations on above that, whether we agree or don't agree. So I think that's an important thing to have very soon. This was one that I thought was something that everybody might find interesting, is that there was a townwide speed limit reduction that in many of the municipalities that we're seeing around now have reduced a townwide limit from 30 to 25 miles an hour by putting a sign at the entrances of all of the roads that lead into the town. Berlin has it, Bolton has it, Concord has it. I mean,
Seen those in a
Bill
couple of
Bill
towns.
had seen several of them as well. And so, that we were gonna, so roads in Northborough would be impacted by the reduced speed limit and would need signs. So that's something that we're talking about there. And
So
would-
so traffic safety is discussing that?
yeah, discussing that, and that it was agreed to. I'd asked to have a couple letters sent to us on Tuesday, and they didn't come.
Okay.
So that was one of them for that. There's also one about fines and listing fines. So fines, there's signage that showed in other towns, Jake breaks.
Yep.
This is a fine for Jake breaks.
Mhm.
Certainly in other towns, well, cities and such.
Be sure to
this-
call it engine braking, not Jake brakes, or
Well,
you get
yeah,
a
you
nasty
can't say Jake
from the
brakes,
Jake
right.
brake company.
It's engine, whatever. But it's there, it says,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
this is done, this is what it's going to cost.
Yep.
And so we're talking about the fact that perhaps seeing a fine
Mm-hmm.
might carry a little bit more importance to it than just saying, shouldn't do that in this area.
Okay.
With the same with the truck exclusions. Since the truck exclusions are hard to keep anybody really following them, to move forward with because they have to come to us and we have to go to the legislature to get fines increased in that case for the truck exclusions. So that we need to write a letter as a board for that increase. Because right now it's 55 miles an hour,
Did you-
$55.
Yeah. Did you say that traffic safety is decided to send a letter to us and they just haven't done it yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna just work with the traffic safety committee chair. and
So-
just make sure that happens, and then we'll.
Right?
we'll
So
act
I
on
mean,
it,
that's
yeah.
what this is reports, letting you know
Yep.
that this has been discussed
Yep.
and we're
No,
gonna move
absolutely.
forward with that. They have a couple of tests that are gonna be done to be able to perhaps get more heavy commercial vehicles on the roads.
And I really like the idea of doing sort of a one-year recap of traffic safety.
Right.
So I would say the next time that a traffic safety item comes from their committee to us and they'll be coming, we'll add that as an agenda item also.
Okay. And just let that committee know that that's gonna
Oh,
be.
yeah, yeah, because I would want their
Expected.
feedback, in the charge that we gave to them, is that still sufficient do they
Right.
think there are any tweaks that should be made after they've been working at it for the past year?
Right, and when did they start, do you remember?
Oh my goodness, right around the time when we got elected, about a
Yeah.
year and a half ago?
A year and a half ago?
I think it was about a year and a half
Yeah.
ago.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's-
yeah, because it was almost simultaneous with that election.
Yep.
That the study version of that wound down.
Yep.
And it was probably around May or June.
Yep.
Of last year that we made it official.
Yep.
Yeah, we might have to look for some more volunteers. We've been having some drop-off issues. All right, another thing that I saw in the email is there was a letter that was sent to us, and I'm sure you all saw it, I don't know if you all read it, from the city of Worcester, that was talking about, let's see who it's from, I can't pronounce his name. Etel Haxiaj, who's the Worcester District 5 City Councilor. Did any of you read that?
I don't know if I saw that one, I'm
See
sorry.
any-
It was hard to get to, because it was a name that we didn't recognize, and when I finally clicked on it, I went, oh.
Did it get barracudaed?
It did not get barracudaed, which I was kind of surprised at. But pretty much what he's asking us to do is to join him and several other areas here to changes to state emergency shelter policy. And he's saying that, looks like Acton, Cambridge, Lowell, Medford, Malden, Melrose, and Newton, Somerville, Springfield. A couple of individuals from those areas have signed on to what he wants to do, which is to rescind what Governor Healy has already put in place, which I think is the five-day maximum for,
So is he looking for boards to vote to do this? It sounds like these are individuals.
he's writing to us, and he says, last week, many of us joined advocates, legislators, families, renters, healthcare providers before the State House to ask you to rescind the 5-day shelter policy program. Mass is the second most expensive state in the United States. And he's asking the rescinding. So I figured I'd bring this up since it was there and be done with it. I personally don't, I don't want to get involved in it. I think that Maura Healy wouldn't have said that if she didn't have to say it. I think it's a financial situation. We've already heard about a shortfall of $2 million, was it $2 billion in the monies for the state, that they thought they would have enough from the millionaire's tax, and they've got a shortfall. So I think that there's going to be some financial tightening of the belt.
Okay.
So.
So
I
so
just
you're
brought
not
that up.
recommending a specific
I am
action
not
on that?
recommending, I'm not recommending any action on it,
Okay.
let alone other action.
Well, that's easy.
And then the other last thing was, there was talk of the EVs and what we are expected to have for EV units, usage units. Like, we talked about 11 at the fire station.
Okay, yeah, we decided on 6 at the fire station. The building committee is.
But I thought they were only gonna be wired, not
There'll be-
actuals.
No, they'll be wired for 11 and 6 installed. It's 3 installed, each of them can charge 2 vehicles. And that's to match up with the amount of money that we get from the state. State provides.
It's a grant?
Yeah, state provides $50,000 per street address for municipal charging stations. And I forget exactly what the costs were, but 6 of them ended up being pretty close to $50,000, which is how we settled on that.
Wouldn't you rather have at least one at Ellsworth?
Oh, they can be it's $50,000 per street address. So we can do 6 at Ellsworth McAfee, we can do 6 at the library, we can do 6 at Town Hall. We can
Well,
do 6 at
granted,
the fire
parking
station.
is tight there.
Yeah, I'm
so
not,
Yeah.
I still want to park my Gas Explorer places and have some.
I'm not suggesting we do all of those right away, but I know you've been working, I don't know any of the details.
Yeah, I'm actually working on a memo for you tomorrow regarding this very matter, so.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
So, in looking at the document that came through that said leading by example executive order, did you send that out to us?
You'll have to tell me more about it, I don't,
It's from mass.gov. It says leading by example executive order 594, decarbonizing and minimizing environmental impacts on state government.
no, I did not, I don't remember sending it if I did.
All right, so it starts to talk about that in 21, Baker Polito administration signed an executive order leading by example. What I thought was interesting is I read this. This seems to me to be for the state, like for the state's fleet, not for the state of Massachusetts, each municipality, but the state itself, like Governor Healy's area.
Yeah, just for their own
Yeah,
operations.
this is their own operations. So, and one of the things that I thought was quite interesting in it was that there was one line that talked about the, I'm not gonna be able to find it while I'm looking for it. So, it does not apply to any vehicle that transports a person. Like say, a police car, an ambulance or something, where you're transporting somebody. It sounds like it's the fleet. Like say you had the car, you worked for Maura Healy, and you were the executive that had the car. It depended on what you did in your activity, whether you were there to bring one person from this point to that point. If you're transferring a body, human hopefully and alive, you're not required to have an EV unit.
So coroners can use gas power.
Yeah, they can, I guess.
All right.
But it didn't state whether they're alive or dead, they just said persons. So
It's getting dark.
Yes. But I thought I would bring this up because I personally think that there's times where this is gonna be kind of an issue if we try to get all police cars on electric and all, everything we own on electric, just because of the way it has to recycle for energy. I mean, if it's gonna be a 6-hour thing, what are you gonna do when that happens? If somebody forgot to go and recharge the car?
I mean, I think the current police plans are all for
Hybrids.
hybrid Ford
Hybrid
Explorers.
gas, yeah, so I mean, I'm cool with the hybrids.
Yeah,
But
there's
this
no
worries me.
state requirement for any municipal vehicles to be electric. There are a lot of police departments that are looking at, and I read something very recently on a couple of pretty large cities.
There's one in California
That have gone all electric for all or almost all of their patrol cars. That gets tricky because of how much time it takes to charge.
Right.
So I spoke with a police sergeant in Westborough about a year ago. There was an EV expo in Westborough that the sustainability committee there ran. And they have one electric vehicle that's used as a sergeant's car. And they said he loved it, and apparently some of the other staff there loved it, that the sergeant's car isn't patrolling, it isn't being driven constantly.
Right.
It's that sergeant's car, and when that sergeant needs to go somewhere, it goes with them, and other than that, it just sits in a parking lot. So there's plenty of opportunity to charge. He said they would love to get them for patrol cars, but the charging time is tricky because they're constantly on the move.
Right.
So there are, within the EV world, there's a level 1 charger, a level 2 charger, and a level 3 charger, and the level 3 charger is the fastest.
Right, no, it's expensive.
And definitely the most expensive. So he said until they could find a way to get a grant to get some level 3 chargers at the police station, it wouldn't make any sense to get them for patrol cars, because with a level 3 charger, in the half hour that it takes to do a shift change in the meetings before a shift, you could get quite a bit of the juice back in that patrol car to have it be plenty enough for the next shift. And he said that's when those pieces come together, then that could work out really well. But that's a little ways off.
So,
Yeah.
at least 10 years away.
I honestly, I hope less, but until those pieces are in place, it really doesn't make any sense to use them for patrol cars. It may make sense to do it for, sergeant's cars, a chief's car, something like that. When the opportunity comes up, once the infrastructure is there for a charger at the police station, which we don't have, so.
Yeah, it's kind of like your cell phone.
Yeah.
Now you're getting all these rapid chargers for the cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
But the night you forget to plug it in, the next morning, if you can't find that rapid charger, you're gonna spend the whole day going,
I'll try to find that article on, I don't remember if it was an article or something I watched on the news about a few cities that have converted completely over to EV for police, and they love it. And it has nothing to do with the energy savings. It's just they find it to be more reliable, and the officers prefer driving them.
wow,
Not recommending for us right now, but
okay.
just interesting you brought it up. Sorry, that's a diversion. Are you all set with reports?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Julianne, reports.
So I attended the Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting Thursday night, and they are very happy with the donation or the ARPA funding for benches and picnic tables. There were some proposals on where those would go, but but we decided as a committee to kind of take a look at the suggested sites and get a better sense of how they would look there. And my only other thing is, Lori had suggested the streetscape project, offering trees to people in the downtown area for their property. And I think on mine, I asked for $25,000 for that. Is there any way we could vote on that tonight, or that is,
not
okay?
without-
So can that be on the next agenda, please?
On ARPA,
I think there's ARPA discussion on the 9th anyways.
yeah.
Okay,
yeah, so
great, thank you.
Julianne, so this is it's downtown. Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Laura?
My report from our last meeting was just to express my appreciation to the team for the financial summit. It was really informative. I know I've repeated that a lot tonight, but thank you. I hope we can continue that into the future. I got to participate in one of the fire station informational videos with Northborough Cable. Those are now viewable. I think they were just published this week. I also am going to be joining the Senior Center for Summer Fridays coming up on September 6th with Mitch. I look forward to seeing everybody there. This past Tuesday, we were invited to the Battle of the Boroughs by the Worcester Red Sox. I was delighted to attend that event and also to meet with other select board members from surrounding towns. I'm hoping we can collaborate more in the future with them. And then I was able to help a local Boy Scout work on a merit badge for a local government, his citizenship in the community badge, and it was exciting to hear all the different ways that they're hoping to get involved. So that's all for my reports.
Thanks, Laura. Laura said we attended the Woo Sox game this past Wednesday night. They called it Battle of the Boroughs. We were not battling with our neighbors by any means. It was a marketing slogan. But it was really successful because we got a chance to talk to select board members and city council members and the mayor in Marlborough because they seated us all together, which was really nice. It was kind of fun to go onto the field. They asked me and the other select board chairs to throw out the first pitch. So there were 4 or 5 first pitches. Maybe between all of them there were a good pitch, I don't know. Laura mentioned that on Friday, the 6th of September, we'll be at the Senior Center for breakfast for any members of the public that wish to come and chat with us. There's an upcoming ribbon cutting at a new business in town that I was invited to participate in, a business called Sassy, Crassy, and Creative, 10 Church Street. It's where the old Glory building was, right behind Specialties. They're taking that over. It's a pretty neat sounding gift shop. Want to congratulate the Community Affairs Committee on a couple of recent concerts. Last night they had Billy and the Jets there, a Billy Joel and Elton John cover band that was a lot of fun, and the rain just barely held out, and it was a really good turnout. And the Sunday before, they had the rescheduled Playing Dead, the Grateful Dead cover band, with the most excellent weather possible, amazing turnout. They're a really good band, and the community really enjoyed having them there. Let's see, I want to congratulate the library on a great summer community art show. They had, just before our last meeting, they had a celebration where they announced the winners of the art show in many categories. That was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to more art shows at the library coming up in the large meeting room. And I want to congratulate town resident Savannah Staples on, she released an EP. She's an excellent local musician, just graduated from Algonquin, gave a really nice concert at Trinity Church a couple days ago, and is going off to college, and I have a feeling we're going to be hearing great things from her in the future. And that ends my reports. Any reports from Tim?
I have 9 items I'm not going to cover with you. I'll send them in writing to you tomorrow.
Okay.
I have
Diane,
no report.
anything? Okay. Let's see, any other business to come before the board?
I guess just one thing, and people may have seen it on social media, just want to thank the fire department for working through their equipment issues that they've been having lately. And thank you to, I believe it was the Maynard Fire Department, for lending us their backup ambulance. So, thank you to Maynard and the Northborough Fire Department.
Let's see. public comment. Is there any comment that anyone in the physical or remote audience wishes to make before we close for the evening?
Can I make something?
I see actually no remote attendees nor in-person attendees, so that's an easy one. I will declare public comment closed. And with that said, if there's nothing else.
Lisa has.
Yeah,
Oh,
I did,
sorry.
actually, I forgot about this.
Sure.
I was doing some research again, and I find that there's, I took pictures of it so I wouldn't forget it. I forgot it. Hang on. Trying to find the general, it came from the Collins report. Did you read that? So the Collins report, I don't know, gives us something, what's a quarter? And so there's funding, or there's a grant for certain things.
Okay.
And, hold on. Some of the things that you can, I believe, because it didn't say how you got the grants, it just said some of the things that they're putting in. So there was a grant for what Andy's doing, recodification. There was a grant for that, you could
Okay.
research. There was one for site cleanup. It says complete a brownfields inventory so that the community is aware of the all abandoned and underutilized properties in order to move forward with plans to assess, remediate, and redevelop these properties. Engage the regional planning agency and/or DEP statewide brownfields coordinator on developing plans to assess, remediate, or redevelop. We have 5 that are listed in the DEP thus far.
Okay.
So that's kind of interesting, because again, if there's any grant money, this is kind of the time now to, because it started today.
Okay.
16th.
Might be worthwhile maybe for you to email Tim and Diane with the thoughts as those grants, and they
They
can.
come from the Collins Center?
Yeah,
That's where they usually take money, they don't give money out.
I know, it's
They
kind of
might, they might just be
surprising.
talking about grants that are
Yeah, all
available
right.
from other
I didn't
organizations.
see it, yeah, it
I
certainly
didn't
sounds
see
so,
that-
so we'll see if
that
we can
memo.
Yeah,
get some of it.
yeah, it starts out, it says grant alerts, August 19th, Massachusetts Community Compact Best Practice Grants open today. And then best practice program begins. New this year are grants for municipalities seeking to improve or create a charter and/or to review operations of organizational structures. Other eligible projects are outlined in the link below. So they had quite a few things. I'm like, I don't know how much, but
Oh, if it came today, I didn't get through all my emails today, if it
Okay.
came today. I still got a couple left.
I thought that was a very
Yeah, no, that's
interesting,
good. Good to know. I would, yeah, if you want, because I don't think I'm on the mailing list for the Collins Center, if you want to forward that around to the board,
all right,
that way we'll all have that, include staff, of course.
sorry, I forgot.
Okay, that's all right. Anything else before we adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
Oh, wait a minute, wait.
Oh,
Thank you for the pizza, Tim.
yes. Oh, now the public.
Ice cream
will-
next week, Lisa Maselli.
Ah,
No quizzies.
Now the public knows we eat poorly before meetings. All right,
All right, I'm done.
is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Laura, seconded by Julianne to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned 9:06 PM. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.